HPAPI is a big problem in that sense because you're talking about cytotoxic drugs, drug conjugates, which are all less than 10 microgram per ml milligram dose, and which really require a contained exposure stuff. And I'll start with Shantanu Sharma. I have a couple of questions for you, but in the generally, I have a few questions before I start on that. Now, I mean, when you talk about, especially for Vandita, you can answer and followed with Roshan and Shantanu. Uh, today cancer is, I mean, like estimated 1 in 1,000 people, and more and more cancer therapeutics are coming into picture. Just 2 days ago, there was a drug that actually the first one for pancreatic cancer. I think it's a monoclonal antibody was approved by FDA. I think for Merck, if I remember correctly. But the question is that. Uh, how do you see this demand for oncology HPAPIs evolving in India, especially in India? I mean, because we are manufacturing mostly for Western companies, not discovering our own medicines yet. We are in the process of doing it. But how do you see that evolving from manufacturing these drugs for Western countries to India itself? And what are the learnings we need to have in terms of pulling this together for India? Because we don't want to sit there as a manufacturer. We also want to do a drug discovery arm for ourselves to discover new drugs. How is it evolving? What do you think, Vandita?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question, sir. So, I feel for India, this is going to be a tremendous opportunity. And if I talk as a global pharmaceutical manufacturing hub, India can definitely strengthen its position by actually investing in advanced HPAPI manufacturing facilities, the containment strategy which we have been talking about, and then the skilled workforce, who's going to be very capable of handling these complex molecules very safely. So I see the demand for oncology HPI is actually evolving mainly, at two fronts. The first is the clinical demand. Because of the cases of the cancer burden, I discussed with you that we can see an exponential rise, and that is the reason the government is supporting, they are giving so much of grants to work on these HPAPIs, the antibody drug conjugate, the precision nanomedicine. So I'm working on precision nanomedicine and RNA technology probably for developing targeted medication. So, with this clinical burden growing, we need to really invest in the HPAPI. And the second thing, the increasing technology demand. Now, we are moving from conventional to the nanomedicine. This actually is driven by the next gen of the targeted oncology therapy. So, at present, we really need to, as all the organization, they need to invest in innovation, in safety, and in talent development so that we can be positioned, to meet this rapidly expanding global need. We really need to work for that, sir.
So how is the industry doing this right now? How are they evolving? Do you have any idea apart from the academic excellence that we're training students and trying to get them ready for industry jobs? But how do you see as an academician the industry should take over this responsibility to uh, bridge the gaps between academia and industry?
Definitely. If you ask me about the industry, so when we talk about the industry is definitely, as an academician, my role is very important because I am going to train the students who are coming to me to understand how safely we have to manufacture the HPAPI at lab level. We need to make them understand that, it is not only you who are being exposed, but then everyone who is coming here is being exposed to this minute level of the potent drug, and it can be very, very harmful for you for the near future. So it is actually, I would say, it is a convergence of so many things: the pharmaceutical engineering and advanced drug delivery, and but then at this point of time, I would have a submission to all the industry people. Even though being an academician, we are going to put our 100% to train our students. We are going to have mandatory training for them. As an I mentioned to you about the cost and the risk assessment training for students, we are going to do at academic level. But then I would want a possible collaboration from the industry. What can be done as a mandate, that training can be taken care by the industry, the internship, it can be 1 week to 2 weeks, so that we can really have the students being trained for that. It shouldn't only be a theoretical perspective that we are talking about, we are debating about, but then we need to really work out for that collaboration, so that we train our students, we have a good man force who's going to work for manufacturing of the safer HPAPIs.
Thank you. What are your thoughts, Dr. Roshan?
Yeah, I think Dr. Mani, I think this is very valid and burning, the situation at this point of time when we talk about the demand for the oncology HPAPIs evolving, right? But again, with India's the kind of the cancer burden increasing, demand for oncology HPAPI certainly is growing actually. But again, we cannot say in terms of the higher tonnage because these are very high potent APIs, right? So we should expect first of all a shift toward the smaller volume and higher value and increasingly complex products, right? So this certainly includes the higher potent small molecule oncology APIs, precision molecules. These are going to be very much in demand, and obviously the specialized payloads which is used for the targeted drug delivery platforms. And subsequently the market will because we need to see the reality in the market as well, right? So market will require the flexible multi-product facilities. It cannot be omni product facilities, right? The strong analytical capabilities has to be built up, rapid scale up from because the demand is going to increase as moment the certain oncological novel products comes into the market. The rapid scale up has to be grown in that way, and uh, particularly the containment systems should be capable enough of handling very low occupational exposure limits. So just put it in a short, like the opportunity for the India, if you're thinking from the Indian perspective as a market, then it's a substantial because it combines the one thing is the scientific talent and process chemistry expertise as well as the manufacturing capability. But however, we cannot overlook the competitiveness. So the competitiveness will depend majorly on more than the cost, right? So the global customers, the multinationals will evaluate the toxicological competence and the containment performance. So basically the data integrity, regulatory compliances in place, and the supply traceability. And therefore, the next growth phase for the oncology HPAPI will be defined not only by the ability to manufacture the potent molecules, but most importantly, the ability to manufacture them safely, consistently, and credibly. So here is the opportunity for the Indian players, to build up the infra, build up the capability, build up and ensure the consistency with respect to safety and contaminants. So that is what
Yeah.
my say on
Just,
this.
just to add to that one, I mean,
Certainly,
every country, I mean, the drugs are handled differently by different people. I mean, uh,
absolutely.
Caucasians handle it differently, Indians handle it differently. I mean, Asian Chinese handle it because the personalized medicine is taken over today compared to how do you assess the for Indian population a different strategy compared to HPAPI safety for a Caucasian population?
Right. I think you rightly said it, Dr. Mani. The every country has a different approach when it comes to the targeted drug delivery or the very molecule-driven approach, and the strategies also differ because the market size is differ altogether. But having said that, all the multinationals, because India has the large the populations and the growing demand of the oncological drugs, because certainly as of now the India is world capital for the diabetes. Having said that, it's going to be a world capital for the oncology, for the cancer, and therefore the approach of major players is looking towards the Indian market, and therefore their approaches are definitely going to change in terms of their infra, in terms of their scale up, in terms of their geographical operations. So therefore, at the same time, the Indian players also are vouching for the oncology, because oncology is if you look at the entire bandwidth of the portfolios, for all the verticals of therapy areas, though it's a cardiovascular, diabetes, antibiotic, and so forth, so on. Out of top 10 performing therapy segment, oncology is the area where the major share is coming from the market, and therefore major players, major multinational companies, and even the Indian multinational companies are vouching to build the portfolio strongly in the oncology. To name few companies like Cipla, Dr. Reddy's, even the Novartis, the GSK, they have very strong presence in this particular portfolio actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Shantanu, sir, how are you? Can you answer the same question? What is the value of oncology in India today? The How are we evolving in India so far? What are your thoughts?
Um, I would like to take up an add-on to the point that Dr. Roshan just made about India fast becoming the oncology capital of the world. I am very sure that we see it happening. Um, because I think it's an anecdotal finding also, and I'm sure if we look at research, we'll be able to confirm this, that the last I heard, people were dying of diabetes and let's say high blood pressure, but recently almost everybody I know sadly has passed away from tumors or cancers, which means that it is becoming a very rampant thing. And that's where I think HPAPIs become super important because um, I think if we are able to build, and taking from you what you said, if we are able to build research products or research medicines and APIs which are homegrown, I'm sure we will be able to do it at an optimized cost, because in India, the problem is not just the scale of the disease, it is also about the cost of the treatment.
Continue with with another question here. There are lots of manufacturing risks. I mean, how do you basically assess these risks, and especially for the people who are exposed at the occupationally, who are working in the facilities? Lower systemic toxicity. What happens is that it depends on the route of administration. Many drugs are given orally, some are given IV, some are. So, inherent threat uh, would I see that when they form aerosols or something, people get maybe exposed rather than, because oral exposure you can minimize it just with some PPE, but uh, so what are your thoughts in terms of this minimizing the lower, because you don't want to build the entire unit just to show that you are actually can do it, but at the same time it has to be cost efficient, I mean, how do you assess that to be a cost efficient HPAPI manufacturing facility in terms of the risk assessment?
I think the first step is to change the way we look at environmental compliance. It should not be seen as a cost of doing business, but as an investment in operational resilience and possibly regulatory readiness and competitiveness in the long term, especially in pharmaceutical industry where environmental compliance covers areas like emissions, hazardous waste, solvent recovery, energy use, the cost of non-compliance, whether it's regulatory action, production disruption, or just losing customer confidence, is much higher. So the most successful companies will not approach this as a compliance function. They will integrate it into plant design and moreover put it as part of procurement and process engineering. For example, investing in a solvent recovery system can reduce both your hazardous waste and raw material costs. And energy efficient HVAC systems can actually lower your electricity consumption while maintaining containment. So that's why encouraging manufacturers to measure financial impact of environmental initiatives rather than just the cost of environmental initiatives is where you need to
Right.
look at. And all global companies are increasingly evaluating suppliers, not just on GMP, not just on quality, but also on environmental performance. So in many cases, investing in a compliance today is also like an investment in securing your future. So the objective is not to minimize the cost of environmental compliance. It has to make sure that we are able to maximize the value generated from it.
Okay, so the AI is now taking over. Less people working at the bench and more AI robots doing all the work. How do you see that panning out in terms of the HPAPI manufacturing safety issues? Because if the robots are working, there's no occupational exposure there. What are your thoughts about it?
I think, yes, I agree with you that yes, it will become more efficient. But again, just like sustainability or anything else, you have to measure the long term impact and not limit yourself to the initial capex. Whether you look at robotics or you look at any innovation in terms of HPAPI manufacturing, the moment you get into looking at how this is going to make me more competitive in the future, or how will I be able to make more potent medicines, better medicines at a lower cost in future, that is what's going to drive you and your company much better in the future. So we can't limit ourselves to the thought of okay, this is a cost right now.
So, Dr. Roshan, what are your thoughts? You also worked in the industry for a while, and
Absolutely.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, we cannot certainly overlook or avoid the presence of artificial intelligence, the robotics, and there is called the blockchain technologies, and even the advanced technology coming into the core manufacturing domain, especially in the pharmaceutical, including the API as well. And that's the reality today. Even the most of the players, if I talk, especially from the multinational companies, they have plugged in this advanced technologies, AI, robotics into their operations, and that greatly changes the entire operations, entire phenomena in the sector. So, robotics, we need to certainly see from both the angles. One is from the commercial angles, and second is from the human angle, right? The human in the sense the workers, the operators, the personnel who are working in the manufacturing areas. We need to see from both the sides. So these are certainly robotics and AI actually reducing the human exposure, obviously, because they are practically, physically involved into the activities and the operations. So the human interference are minimized by that way because the HPAPI, which is again a high potent API manufacturing, so this enables the close material handling. There are the advantage of having this tools or the machineries. Now even the automated charging, including the sampling, cleaning, these are all the unit operations. They are automatically and remotely being taken care. But this certainly does not eliminate the operators. We need to see, while the presence of the robotics, AI, and other automation tools, we are enhancing the operational efficiency, we are enhancing the productivity, we are ensuring the quality and the safety at the shop floor, but they are not eliminating the operators, because certainly we need to have the human interference in the entire process, because at the end of the day, these tools or the automation will guide us, will help us to come to a certain pace. But again, as a human, we need to take a final decisions whether to go ahead or not to go ahead, or how to take a call on that particular operation. So the elimination of operators is absolutely not going to happen. In fact, their role shifts from now. Here is the interesting angle. The operator's role is going to shift directly from the handling to supervision. So they are, rather than operating at shop floor, they will be more supervising the entire operations. They would be looking into the system control. They would be looking into the maintenance. They would be looking into the data review. They would be looking into the exceptional management of the entire operations. And therefore, it is important that future requires more skilled and fewer manual interventions. But again, we need to have the highly trained professionals, personnel who look after the entire end-to-end operation. So it's going to be like, a handshake, the marriage between the advanced technologies versus the personnel who are working into the manufacturing facilities. So it's the future is bright for both the sides. And from the management point of view, this certainly the commercial efficiency, production efficiency, and the quality has been improved with the minimal risk at the shop floor. So it's a balanced approach for that. Sorry. And having said that, the message from this particular question is uh, all the workers, all the personnel, all the operators who are working, they need to upgrade their skills to cope up the demand or the futuristic scenarios which is going to build very soon now. So that is all about robotics and AI and how that is shaping the picture in the manufacturing operations. Yeah, Dr. Mani.
So, Vandita, you have any comments about it?
So I think I really endorse what is being said by Dr. Shantanu and Dr. Roshan. Definitely, AI is going to be the era, the upcoming era, and with the AI coming up in all the software which we are using for the manufacture of the APIs. So, for example, if I'm using a JMP Pro for optimization of my formulation, the chances of the getting more toxicity or it is really going to minimize, because when we are optimizing a formulation, when we are getting a predictive model via machine learning, via digital twinning, and we have a formulation which optimally is going to work for the cancer therapies, I think it's going to be a total transformation from the conventional. But then again, the gist of our discussion today, that we need to learn about the safety, about the containment approaches, so that we can use everything. AI would be there, but then a collaboration of predictive modeling, a collaboration of optimization, everything is finally going to help us to develop more sustainable molecules. That is my we have to look forward for how AI is going to take up, because it is actually transforming, whether I talk of my formulation being developed at lab level, or I think it's being endorsed by Dr. Roshan, who's working there in the company, that we are quite apprehensive about quite a few things with AI. But then, AI is human trained. So the first training is for the human and then the AI.
A couple of questions I'll take selectively for Dr. Roshan Kumar.
Yeah, certainly, please.
You have been working in the industry for a long time and you have a good global R&D experience. Please throw light on how R&D will help in building a safety architecture for manufacturing HPAPIs. I have my own ideas about it, but I want to hear your
Certainly.
thoughts. Yeah.
Sure. My pleasure. In fact, very, very vital question, because we are talking about the R&D and ensuring about the HPAPI manufacturing. So first of all, like R&D is where the safety architecture should begin. That's the very first area or space, I could say. Unfortunately, some or other organization develop the chemistry first and ask EHS team and the engineering team to contain it later. So that is a pretty challenge for them as well. But having said that, HPAPIs that secure the sequence must change now. The R&D has to look after as a safety architecture at the beginning of their development itself, rather than letting these tasks being assigned to engineering team, right? So there are the two phases we need to see it. One at the molecular stage, and second is the equipment stage, possible, as a broader perspective, right? So at the molecular stage, when we talk about the compound, the R&D should generate of course, the toxicological data, which is required to establish the scientific, defensible OEL, in fact, or let's say the provisional exposure band. And at the process stage, because now we moved from the molecular to the process stage. At the process, this is very crucial aspect, right? Because all the researchers who are working in that process establishment should evaluate the various parameters of the process itself, whether it's like, for example, the dustiness, the physical form, the batch size that they are going to operate, the temperature, the pressure, even the reaction hazards are likely to be there, and obviously their exposure potential of each operations. So if that process optimization is well taken care, then R&D can definitely design out the risk by reducing the open transfers, selecting the most appropriate safer solvents, or let's say reagents, and using the wet handling, wherever there is appropriate involved, including the telescopic process steps, and developing the contained sampling and discharge approaches. So that's happened at the R&D level. Now let's see the second perspective at the equipment stage, right? Now the surrogate testing and the containment performance, these studies are must, because they demonstrate whether the proposed technology of the molecule is capable enough of meeting the exposure target. And therefore, the analytical R&D must also parallelly develop the sufficiently sensitive methods to analyze, and for the cleaning verification process and the trace residue detection. So if that is being taken care, finally the process data, the deviations, the monitoring results, and operator feedback collectively return to R&D through a life cycle leadership approach, or let's say life cycle learning approach, right? And therefore, my final stand or recommendation on the R&D to handle this safety architecture is to characterize the hazard, okay, at the very early stage, redesign the process if it is required to be, engineer containment as per the challenges being faced at the R&D level, verify the performances as part of the verification validation aspect, and ultimately the continually improve, because as we process from stage 1 to stage let's say 5, a lot of learning comes out, and accordingly we need to implicate into the process or the overall end-to-end operations. And therefore R&D plays a critical role, and they are actually shaping the safety architecture at the very beginning phase, the moment they start working on the compound, rather than passing on to engineering or the HS team. Yeah.
Thank you. So here's my thoughts about it. Safety is something you can't predict for humans, because animal tox is the first data that you get. Oh, okay, this is toxic at 10 milligrams or 100 milligrams. You get that data. And then you
Right.
try to design your clinical trial. But when I go into the clinical trial, even 1 milligram is toxic in the clinical trial.
Right.
So basically, animal data is totally useless for me many times. Not all the time, but many times. So, having worked on big pharma for 100, more than 100 INDs, and the thing we have done is to taken a detour, and we're using human models now, human organ on a chip models, to get this data faster for humans rather than deriving it from the animals. So that should be, because that's also very easy, because I don't need kilograms of material to do my toxicology studies in rats and dogs, and I can do it in the milligram quantities of and it can be done very fast. And so that you can do the risk assessment faster. We
Very
can
true, very
discuss that
true,
later.
very true. Absolutely, absolutely, because that adds the value, because we get the simulation more effectively, and the outcome is more comparable to implement rather than slightly a variation of, let's say, animal data versus the real data which is going to perform on the human beings, right? So therefore, the such models actually are instrumental to get more accurate, more reliable data, and a lot of efforts are minimized at that particular point of time. Very, very rightly said, doctor.
Yeah, Shantanu sir, I mean, today green chemistry people are talking about, the green chemistry, where is it going? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I think green chemistry has been proven effective, not just in India, but even in foreign countries, especially because it's not just from a green perspective, but it is also from an operational perspective. You end up saving a lot of resources, which means it directly impacts your bottom line as well. And we have to be honest about it. Business is for business. So if you are going to make a good bottom line, the step makes sense. So green chemistry, I think, has taken off really well, both in terms of different molecules, different processes, shorter steps, shorter cycles, different kind of mixtures that are done. So a lot of experimentation is also happening, both at the academic level and at the research and CDMO level as well. So I think we will see a lot of green chemistry happening in the future as the compliances and the requirements from larger companies increase.
Okay. Yeah, one of my friends is actually using some bacterial enzymes and other enzymes to cut down number of steps and making sure that they have only
Yeah,
5 steps, 15 steps. Okay,
yeah,
great. Uh, Vanita madam, now you are in targeted cancer therapy. Now, targeted cancer therapy, I mean, sometimes I feel, is it really targeted? Because, I mean, out of 100 people, maybe the drug will work in 10 people. Okay, how do you manage that? Because when you go into the patients, if it doesn't work for 90 people, only works in 10 people.
So when we talk of the oncology API, this is as on today, they are the most transformative development if you talk about the modern cancer therapy. But their significance, as you know, you are rightly saying that it is not their high potency, but then we are trying to enable a precision treatment. We are designing a treatment for specific patient. We are specifically mutating. We are working on the genetic therapy. So these molecules, they are designed to act on specific molecular pathways for the cancer cells, and this is what they are, this is how they're going to allow us to achieve that therapeutic efficacy at very low dose, while we are not going to affect the healthy tissue. And this is the main motive. We don't want the targeting to the normal cell, and that is how the side effects they are popping up. With these precision medicine, where we are trying to target only the cancer cells, we are going to have done with the off targeting. So the precision oncology platform, they are on the rise, and in many of the treatment, the HPAPI, the which is actually the active weapon here, it ensures that we are reaching the right target with maximum effectiveness and minimum off target toxicity. However, innovation in oncology does not end with only drug discovery. We are just popping and talking about the drug discovery. Equally important would be that we have to manufacture them very safely and we have to work with them consistently. This is where we need the containment technologies and the stringent quality system along with the highly skilled workforce. So, from academic perspective, I believe that we have the responsibility to prepare the next gen of pharmaceutical professional so that they are trained, with the risk assessment, with containment approaches and GMP, so that we can meet and we can produce these precision targeted medication for our population to actually complete off to do away with the cancers which are actually rising.